everybody. This is Carolyn from Homesteading Family, and I love home-cooked meals. I just love feeding my family really healthy, good for you food that I know exactly what was in it. But let's face it, cooking every single meal from scratch can take a long time. And sometimes you just need a break or you need a quick meal. And so that's why it is wonderful to know how to pressure can so that you can make your own convenience foods that are just sitting there waiting for you. Now, we're going to go ahead and pressure can some venison stew today, and I think you guys are going to be amazed at how simple this is. It's not scary and it's not hard, and I'm going to show you how to do this. Now we have a nice bowl here of this beautiful fresh venison. Josh just got this morning, just went and harvested a venison from out on the property. And I just have this nice roast cut up into chunks. Now, you could do this with beef. You could do this with lamb, with elk, with moose, whatever red meat you have on hand. And just go ahead and take a nice roast that doesn't have too much connective tissue or too many fatty bits, and just go ahead and chop that up into nice chunks for a stew-sized chunks. I also have some potatoes chopped here. This is mostly red potatoes. Russets would be fine. There's a few golds in here. I find that the reds hold up really well under the longer pressure canning time. And this again is just diced. Just a nice large dice, you know, as a stew size. And no, I did not peel them. You can if you want, but these are going to pressure can for 90 minutes in the canner, so there's no way that any bacteria from the skins is going to survive that pressure canning, so I'm just not worried about that. Now I also have some carrots, and these are some beautiful carrots that we've had in the pantry. There's actually some purple carrots in here, so they make this really fun. And just some regular orange carrots, and just dice them up, a nice large dice for stew. And then I have some onions that are chopped and some salt. Now, when I'm getting ready to do a large canning project, the first thing that I want to do is make sure I get my jars all ready. So you can see we have been washing and drying jars back here, making sure they're really nice and clean and they are ready to go. So I have a few up here I'm going to fill right now. Now, the next thing I do is get my kettle on to boil, and by that I mean just my regular old tea kettle, because we're going to need to top this off with boiling water. After that, I make sure that I have my canner ready to go. So my pressure canner has a little bit of water in it and it's heating up. And I'm going to take you out there and show you how I can. My canning station's set up outside, so I'll take you out in just a few minutes. Once I have that ready to go and all of my equipment laid out, then I'm ready to start filling my jars. So this is so simple. You guys are going to be amazed. All that this takes is just putting a little bit of the stuff into each jar. And so I'm going to start over here. I have very clean hands, and I'm going to take just a handful of onions and go ahead. Maybe I'll do 2 handfuls of onions in this jar, and a couple of handfuls of carrots. The order doesn't matter and the amount doesn't matter. This is so simple. Because this is going to can for the whole length of time, you really don't need to worry about the recipe exactly. You have a lot of latitude when you're pressure canning, especially for the full 90 minutes. Now I'm just going to go ahead and drop in some meat. And I'm just going to do a couple of handfuls of meat. Now the great thing about this is you get to can it in water, because that meat in there is going to go ahead and make its own broth while it cans under the pressure. And we're just going to pack that right up, leaving a good about inch of headspace there. And on to the next jar. So you can see how simple this is. Just some onions, some carrots, and you're just going to do this for all the jars that you want to fill. And if you want to leave one of these things out, that's fine. Maybe you want to do more carrots or less carrots. However you want to formulate yours, that is absolutely fine. And again, just go ahead and pack that in there. Okay, and I'm going to do one more. And you can see how fast this goes. Once you have these veggies chopped, this is not a labor-intensive project. which is really nice. Especially if you've already harvested the meat that day, you're ready for a little bit of a break anyways. Something simple to do. Now, a lot of times while we are cleaning meat, I will just get this started right away. And, you know, I'll end up with 40 jars canned by the time we're done cutting and wrapping anything we want to go in the freezer. So that just makes your day so efficient, especially if you have a nice large pressure canner that can hold a lot. Now, I'm just going to take a teaspoon of salt and put that right on the top of each jar. This is entirely for flavoring. If you, for any reason, want to leave the salt out, there is no safety involved in putting the salt in, so go ahead and just leave it out if you would like. Personally, I save any seasonings for later, any herbs or anything like that, because you know, I feel that between the salt and the onion, you really just have a good enough product and it's plenty flavorful. All right, so now that I have that done, I'm gonna grab my tea kettle. Okay, now my kettle's been boiling, so it is very hot, and I am just going to go ahead and pour that right on over the top of all of these goodies in the jar and fill it right up to about that inch of headspace. There we go. It's starting to cook that meat almost instantly on contact. And this is going to be wonderful because when you have this done, everything is going to be so well cooked. That meat is going to be super tender. It's all going to be really flavorful. And all you'll have to do is dump it into a pot and heat it up for a few minutes, and you will be ready to go. Now, one thing you really do need to do in this part of the process is to make sure that you are, I overfilled that one a little, I'm gonna have to take a little out. Make sure that you don't have any air bubbles in there. Now, this is not packed so tightly that you can't just kind of give it a little jiggle, and make sure that there are no air bubbles right in there. So, okay, I overfilled the water on this one, so I'm just going to pull it out by the spoonful before I make a mess. And just pull a little bit out, back down to about the bottom ring on that jar. There we go. If you put too much liquid in there, then what you'll do is it will go ahead and force it out of the jar while it's canning. And that can get food particles on your rim, which will not allow your jar to seal properly. It'll also force out a lot of that liquid, and then you're left with a jar that only has liquid partially up. And that's actually not a problem health-wise, that's okay. But it's not as pretty because some of the food above the liquid can start to discolor a little. It's fine to eat, but you know, we like our stuff to look good too. All right, so now I'm gonna take my clean rag here. I'm gonna take a clean spot of this, and I'm gonna take just a tad of water that I have, just clean water, and I'm gonna go ahead and go around the rim very carefully to be sure that there is no food particles, no salt or anything like that spilled on the rim, because that could keep your jars from sealing properly, and we sure don't want that. I tend to go through afterwards with a clean, dry finger and just double check. If you feel any nicks, if you feel any food or anything, then your jars just won't seal properly, and it's, you know, frustrating when you have jars that don't seal well. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my flat lids and put them on. There used to be a recommendation that you heat these. There is no longer that recommendation, so you can just put them right on, and then take my screw tops and tighten those down, just finger tight. And all that means is I don't really need to get in there and wrench it down real hard with my whole hand, just to the strength that your fingers can just tighten it down. All right, now the next step is getting these into the canner. All right, so you can see that the pressure canner is nicely heated, and while I'm putting the jars in, I'm gonna turn the heat off. I always do this and let it just drop down just a little bit on temperature, so it's not quite such a shock to the jars. Now, the next step is gonna be getting your food into the pressure canner. Never try to do this without the jar lifters. I've done it several times. It's hard and you are very likely to get burnt. And we're just going to settle these right on down. Now these jars are hot from putting in that boiling water. And of course the water in here is hot. It's not quite boiling yet, but it's very close. We're going to get these settled right on in. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and get our lid on the canner. This particular canner has an arrow and a line to match up to, so you know right where to line your lids. And then you're going to go ahead and just slide the lock right on over and snug it on down. Now when we start, we want to make sure we do not have a cap or a weighted gauge or jiggler or anything on our vent over here. And